Hi guys, today we're going to talk about the Pythagorean Theorem and how to find one of the missing sides. But before we do that, I'm just going to quickly run down a couple of things in terms of what to look for. So as most of you did already, the Ed puzzle from Tuesday, you know that the Pythagorean Theorem only works for right triangles. Okay, only works for right triangles. There are a few pieces of the triangles that have particular names. The legs, which are the two sides of the triangle that make up the right angle. So if you want to look at this one right here, side BC and side AC are the two sides that make the right triangle right here. Okay, so those are also the shortest sides. The third side of the triangle is called the hypotenuse. Don't get hung up on how complicated the word is, but that is the side that is opposite from the right angle. See how it's directly across? Some of you will notice it is also the one that kind of looks like a ramp or like a slope. Okay? You got to know that this is always going to be the longest side, and we're going to run through some examples in terms of how important that is. The legs of the triangles are always going to be B and A, or A and B. The hypotenuse is represented by the letter C. If you looked at the video you should have looked at Tuesday, you would know that this only works for right triangles again. So the Pythagorean theorem is written as this equation. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That means leg squared plus the other leg squared will equal the hypotenuse squared, which is the longest side. Okay, so again, A and B are the legs, they are the shortest sides, and C is the hypotenuse, which is the longest side. And we're going to walk through a couple examples of why that is so important. All right. So this is a Pythagorean theorem generator. We're just going to do one example on here in terms of finding out the missing side. You will always be given two sides, and then you have to find the third. Today we're just going to work on finding the hypotenuse, which is C, across from the right angle, and that is also the longest side. So today only I'm going to give you the legs, A and B, and we're going to figure out what C is. So in any right triangle, the sum, addition, of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. So that means A squared plus B squared, or leg squared, plus other leg squared will equal the hypotenuse, which is this longest side, which is across from the right angle. So let's say that one of the legs is 3 and the second leg is 4. Now we're going to figure out, based on what we're given, we're going to figure out what C is. So we're going to calculate. Always remember, you write down your equation first. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Take our legs, plug them in for the appropriate variables. Take 3, put it in for A, and take 4 and put it in for B. Okay, now we're just going to do a little bit of math. We've already worked on the squares and square roots. We're going to keep doing it, all right? So 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16. What comes next? Add them up. So you get 25. 16 plus 9 is 25. So 25 equals C squared. How do we get this square out of here? Remember, how do you undo a square? You do the opposite, which is the square root. What's this? You take the square root of 25, take the square root of C squared. What is the square root of 25? It is 5. Therefore, the hypotenuse is 5. Pay close attention. That C, or the hypotenuse, is always the longest side. Is 5 longer than 3 and 4? Most certainly, so you know you've done it correctly. Let's look at another example. All right, let's look at another example. So it says find the length of the hypotenuse. Again, we're going to find the biggest side. So you should automatically think to yourself, I have a leg and another leg, and I know that they are legs because they are the sides that form the right angle. I know that C, or the hypotenuse, is missing because that is the one across from the right angle, okay? So you should be thinking in your head, I know that this is going to be the longest side, so what should it be bigger than? It has to be bigger than 12, and it has to be bigger than 5. So first things first, write down your equation, okay? Now I'm going to take each leg and put them in for the right variables. We know that one of the legs is A, one of the legs is B. We're going to take the numbers given, we're going to plug them in, okay? What do I do now? I have to do my exponents. I have to do 5 squared and 12 squared. What's 5 squared? 25. What's 12 squared? 144. What's next? Do your addition. 144 plus 25 is 169 equals c squared. How do I get c all by itself? Meaning, how do I get rid of the square? What's the opposite of square? Square root. I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, when you square a square root or take the square root of a square, this exponent cancels out, leaving you with just c. Now think, what's the square root of 169? What number times itself will give you 169? And when we do that, you know that it is 13. Therefore, the hypotenuse, the length is 13 meters. Again, 13 is the hypotenuse, therefore it has to be the biggest. Is 13 bigger than 12 and 5? Most certainly, you know you've done it correctly. Is briefly watch this video. This instructor may be able to teach you this a little bit differently, or maybe help you understand a little bit better than I've been able to. So just watch the short video.
Find the length of the hypotenuse of the triangle. First, notice we have the symbol for a right angle. That means that this is a right triangle. So our variable c is the hypotenuse because it is the side opposite of the right angle. The side that is 3 inches and the side that is 4 inches are the legs of the triangle because they form the right angle. So to find the hypotenuse c, we will use the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem states that the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs, which our legs will be A and B, is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse, which we said the hypotenuse is C. So what we'll do is substitute in the lengths of the legs, 3 inches and 4 inches, in for A and B. So we'll have A is 3 squared plus B 4 squared is equal to the hypotenuse c squared. So now let's begin to simplify. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9, plus 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16, and that's equal to c squared. 9 plus 16 is 25, and that's equal to c squared. Now, to get c by itself, what we'll do is take the square root of each side. So we take the square root of c squared and the square root of 25. So this gives us c, and what number multiplied by itself gives us 25? The answer is 5. So we found that c is equal to 5. So the length of our hypotenuse is 5 inches.
All right, guys, so now that you've watched those two videos, maybe or hopefully it's a little bit clear to you in terms of what needs to be done. But today, if you look at the screen, you're only going to be finding C. So for today, I've given you the legs of each of these triangles, and I want you to try and do the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, to figure out what the hypotenuse is. And you can answer those multiple choice questions right now.